Hey, it's Zach from What the Pod Was That and the All About Nothing podcast. And America's birthday is coming up faster than we can track. Celebrate Independence Day in style with ZJZ Design's latest t-shirt collection on TeePublic. Introducing 3 brand new 4th of July heart designs that perfectly capture the spirit of America. These shirts feature vibrant, patriotic colors and unique heart-shaped designs that stand out at any celebration. Whether you're heading to a fireworks show, a barbecue, or just enjoying the summer sun, our 4th of July heart collection has something for everyone. Show off your love for the red, white, and blue with ZJZ Design. Visit ZJZ Design's TeePublic shop today and get ready to shine this Independence Day. Links in the show notes or visit zjzdesigns.com and check out all the great designs. New designs come up often. zjzdesigns.com.
This episode of the All About Nothing podcast is sponsored by listeners like you and Big Media LLC, encouraging you to check your voter registration. In a world where every voice counts, ensuring your registration is accurate and up to date is the simplest, most effective way to guarantee your vote is heard. Don't leave your participation to chance. Take a moment today and verify your status and stay ready for the next election by visiting theallaboutnothing.com/voter.
The All About Nothing podcast may have language and content
that isn't appropriate for some.
Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, Nothingers, to the All About Nothing podcast. This is episode number 307. I am Barrett Gruber. Please subscribe and share the show. That's how we get new listeners. Please also consider supporting the show financially by visiting theallaboutnothing.com and becoming an official member and proudly calling yourself a true Nothinger. We'll have more details on that at the end of the show. If you can't do that, please give us a 5-star review, a like, and follow us across social media. You can find links at theallaboutnothing.com. Before we get to our guest, Andrew Clough, we are going to thank our friend out in Idaho, Denny LeVay, who is a Republican candidate for Senate out there in Idaho. Really appreciate him being on the show. That was one of the longer recordings I think I've ever done for this show. It turned into a 2.5-hour recording that I was able to cut down to about an hour or 2 hours and 20 minutes. But really interesting, had a really good time. And if actually by the time this episode airs, his primary in Idaho will have been done, and we'll know where he stands. So I'll tell you how he does on the Kind of Daily Show when we do that. So, but again, big thanks to Denny LeVay for being on the show with us. Today, we are joined by Andrew Clough, a candidate running for South Carolina's 5th Congressional District. Andrew is not a career politician. He is an airline worker, a stepfather, and a community advocate who has chose to make Carolina his home. Running under the banner of People Over Politics, his campaign focuses on everyday challenges facing working families, rising costs of living, and a need for accountability leadership in Washington. We're here to discuss his vision for District 5 and what he means to when he says enough is enough. Welcome, Andrew, to the show. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's first of all, are you all getting enough rain up there in York County?
Well, it's been pretty sunny and nice the last few days. It did rain a little bit, maybe a week ago, a few days ago. But yeah, it's been a weird spring to say the least. Yeah. Not as rainy as normal.
No, it's been difficult. I think over the course of the last 2 months, I think we've maybe gotten about 1.5 inches of rain, and that's just not enough for us down here. So in Lexington. So please, Andrew, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm 45. I've lived in Rock Hill for a few years now. I transferred to work. I work for American Airlines, so the airline industry, you transfer around sometimes to Charlotte. So I work in North Carolina, but I live in South Carolina. It's the whole commuter thing, I guess you could say. A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
Whole commuter to the city. I grew up in Bangor, Maine, of all places.
Oh.
Maine. And so I've been following the Senate race in Maine with Graham Plattner because I am from Maine. But I grew up there. I lived in Phoenix for a little bit. I had a house in Alabama. Pretty much I've lived in the South for a while in different states. And I've moved around. My dad was a doctor. My mom was a nurse before I was born. Then she became a house mom. But now I'm working class. I'm a union member. I work for American Airlines, and I'm married. I've been married for, I want to say, a year now, but with my wife for 5 years total. And she's an immigrant from Mexico, which we'll get into. because immigration is obviously a big topic in this country. And
Yeah.
and so that pretty much rounds it out. I just decided to jump
I was
up and
going to
run
say,
because I don't like what I see.
yeah. No, and that's that in my I have absolute respect for that, because I think that ultimately is what creates some of the best candidates, is the
Mhm.
ones that don't like what they see and they want to bring change
One of my
rather than just
inspirations, which we'll
enter
get
in
into,
and
but one of my inspirations is AOC. She was a waitress bartender and beat out one of the most powerful people in Congress up in New York City, just doing grassroots
yeah,
efforts. So that is one of my inspirations and one of my things. But she didn't have the money or resources that Crawley had, who she ran against and beat the incumbent. So I'm trying to. We don't have an incumbent obviously in this race because he's running for governor, but I'm just trying to step up and do that.
yeah. Being from Bangor, Maine, I can tell you I have been to Bangor, Maine, and I have stalked outside of Stephen King's driveway, where he's got the when I was there, he had the creepy spider web sort of looking
Oh
gate
yeah.
outside of it. I'm
And
not sure if he still does.
and the funny thing about that is the first year we lived there, when my dad moved there to start his practice in Bangor, we lived across from Stephen King. We rented a house across from.
Oh wow,
That Halloween, my mom sat on the porch with him passing out candy. This was in the late '80s, so the height of
that's
his career.
cool.
And he's just a down to earth guy. He's done a lot for the community. I love his books. And he's another inspiration because he went through so many publishers, failing after one, but then became till one took him up and became successful. You got to learn from your failures to be successful.
Absolutely. You've emphasized that you are not a career politician.
Mhm.
How has your experience as an airline worker and a community advocate shaped your perspective on the specific needs of South Carolina's 5th District?
Well, it's definitely been different, I'll tell you that, and just the fact that the other day, and I did a post about this on social media, my car's an economy car, for example. I'll use that as an example. And gas prices have got outrageous. We as the working class are the ones who get hit the hardest. And realizing that with grocery prices, gas prices, medical expenses, we're the ones who are always hurting. We're the ones that are always down at the bottom. Yet the thing is, the working class is the majority of voters. The working class is what keeps this country running. So I've had a totally different perspective of it. And as being a union member, unions are sort of run like a government. You vote on elections for shop steward. You vote um, for the head of the union. You vote for all these positions and all these factions. So it's sort of a hierarchy in unions as well as the government.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Your campaign slogan is "Enough is enough." What is the specific breaking point or moment that convinced you that it was really time to step up and run for Congress?
Well, the main moment was seeing what ICE is doing, to be honest with you. Immigration. My wife's an immigrant from Mexico. She's been here 25 years and she's still fighting for her freedom. And when you see people get round up because of who they are, their heritage, seeing kids get rounded up, it's heartbreaking. When you're seeing what is going on in our country right now, it's heartbreaking. And I have moral values. I have a heart and I have a bigger mouth than most people. My wife can contest to that. I love to talk. I'll go around and work all over. I work for a big company and I'm talking to everybody. And that's the thing. When you're in politics, you need to listen in the district, but you also need to be a voice in DC for your constituents and to fix problems. Plus you need a backbone up there. And I believe I have all these qualities. So I'm like, well, why not stand up and do something different? Because I look at most of the politicians up there, they're lawyers, they're business owners, they're already wealthy. You need working class representation in Congress. You need people like that. Unfortunately, they get forced out because people do not believe that they have a right up there. But when you're the majority as a working class person, you have every right to be there and be a voice for the people and actually fight for the people.
You all living basically on the doorstep of Charlotte. Charlotte was one of the hotbeds when it came to ICE entanglements with individuals. Did you happen to have any I guess, involvement, or did you see any firsthand ICE detainments, that sort of thing?
Not me seeing firsthand, but true story. I have a coworker I work with, who's of Hispanic descent. He was on his way to work. He was at gas station getting gas, and ICE detained him just for being Hispanic. I mean, he works for American Airlines, so obviously he's a citizen. And because they said he looked like someone that they were looking for, which is wrong. I mean, and he was detained. He had to call sick from work. Luckily, the managers excused it because they understood, but the fact that ICE even detained him for being Hispanic right there. I mean, I have firsthand accounts of coworkers doing that. Luckily, my wife, she's going through the process. She's doing the court dates and everything. But when you have coworkers say they've been detained by ICE, it's just for being Hispanic. I mean, there's no justice in that.
Well, and I can tell you firsthand, I have friends and neighbors that are of Hispanic descent. My direct next door neighbors, they are from the Dominican Republic. Now, they have been in the United States and are citizens of the United States, both my neighbor and his wife, for the last 30-something years. They've had children born here in the United States that have grown up as citizens of the United States, natural born. And, he and I will have conversations while we're out there just standing in the yard, and he'll say, I genuinely have a fear that there is the potential that I'm going to do something that gets noticed at Walmart or at around town that is going to give off the perception to someone who either is going to make a phone call to their hotline, or I'm just going to be spotted by a Lexington County police officer that's going to decide, hey, I need the attention of ICE. And then at that point, and he's 70 something years old. This isn't a scenario where even if he was here illegally, as a 76-year-old man, he's not threatening anyone. He owns property. And as far as I'm concerned, he's paid his dues working for the University of South Carolina. It's clearly in my opinion, it's clearly a tactic of basically just threatening and trying to scare people that are not the same colored skin as I am.
Yeah. And it's like my wife. She's been here 25 years. Granted, come across the border, there's a whole different story there because she was robbed and all this, but everybody's got a different story. But the fact is, she pays taxes. She's gone to the same church since 2006. She owns 2 properties, pays property taxes on them, has 4 children. 3 of them are U.S. citizens. 1 is in the U.S. Army based out of Fort Jackson. So I know a little bit about the immigration system. And if you want to fix the system, because yes, you need secure borders, you need to keep the criminals out, but you also need a fair system so hard workers can come here, because the majority of people coming over here want a better life for themselves. They have they come over, they want to make more. They want to help our industry, and it does help our economy, to be honest with you. So to fix the problem, you need more immigration judges, not people in mass, because you need to come up with solutions. You need to fix the backlogs, come up with better systems. And as someone who sees the system firsthand, has a wife who's going to the court date, sees a judge, knows what paperwork she needs. I mean, all this they tell you up in the office in this administration are lies, because honestly, they're not getting these benefits of Medicaid and Medicare and food stamps, and they say they're getting all these free benefits. It's a total lie, because I live the system and I see it, and I'm tired of hearing about this, how they're all criminals and rapists and murderers. That's not true. Every immigrant, because I know a lot, are good workers.
I heard a crazy statistic, which at first I thought couldn't possibly be true, but then I started to think about the math and the numbers and things like that pound for pound, an immigrant that comes to the United States and works and buys property and pays taxes and does all of the things that we all do that we just sort of take for granted.
Yeah.
That pound for pound, the value of that individual doing all of the same things that we're doing is worth almost 4 to 5 times as much, because of the fact that they didn't have the initial social services that were a cost to the United States, whether it was state or federal government, they didn't have those initial social services costs that they're contributing to a system that never actually provided for them at younger ages.
Exactly.
And I saw that and I was just like, there's no way that makes sense. And then I started to think about it and I was like, no, 100%, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And we are criminalizing and alienating these individuals who want to come to the United States. You know, it isn't just because they can't have a more prosperous life where they're from. It's that they've chosen the United States over so many other countries that would probably treat them 100% better.
Oh, yeah. There are countries in Europe that, they have universal health care, they have universal higher education, and they treat their immigration population so much better. And they're wealthy countries over there in Europe. They're not third world countries. Yet we're allowed. Why isn't ICE rounding up people to say, they let all these white South Africans in, which doesn't make sense. Yet they're not rounding up illegals from Ireland or England or, what about from Russia? I mean, you still have people like that. It doesn't make sense. They're all Hispanic. Why they're rounding up?
Right.
You don't see it.
It's an intimidation. It's an attempted intimidation. It's an attempt at alienating a very specific group of people that people in this current federal administration, executive branch, are just gung ho with
and
their
they do the jobs
with
we
their
don't want to
particular
do.
brand.
They do the jobs.
Yeah,
we don't
absolutely.
Want to do. I don't want to be out there picking vegetables in the hot sun or on the roof, doing a roofing job, and they get done quickly. We just had our roof done, like here at the house. We had a crew, all Hispanic workers. Guess what? Was done in one day. They tore off the old roof, put the new one on. No prolonged experience.
Yeah. No, I am absolutely, that there have been so many presidents, including Reagan and H.W. Bush and Bush, like Republicans, that have acknowledged the value of the immigrant population in the United States.
George Bush,
and
the last Bush, he tried to come. He had a great immigration policy. Honestly, that would be considered more moderate and liberal, I guess you could say. But the last Bush wanted to give pathway to citizenship for people who've been here longer than 10 years, well securing the borders. Unfortunately, didn't pass the Senate, but it was a great system that he came up with. His immigration policy is probably one of the best, but unfortunately didn't pass the House.
Yeah, I've had Republican friends, even friends that are MAGA, that have asked me, well, what's your solution? Like I said, the simplest solution is to stop calling them illegals. Your attempt at demonizing a group of people by simply labeling them as illegal is what creates the biggest problem. And that's because what happens is by naming them as illegals, you've already created an entire can't think of the word because I'm old and mental blocks, but you've created an entire situation specifically to them that is unnecessary. And then secondly, once you stop calling them illegals, and then you have a court system that is more robust and can handle the number of immigrants that we have coming into the country, and figuring out a path to citizenship or figuring out a path to eliminate the name illegals is absolutely necessary. Other countries around the world that don't have our gross domestic product have figured out how to do it. They take in refugees from places like Syria and Africa, and they know they have figured out how to accommodate for people in their systems. Do they still have people that are out there saying that, they don't want them here and they should go home? Yeah, 100%. Those people still exist in everywhere we live.
A couple years ago,
but their governments are supportive of their immigration.
And a couple years ago, I was in the Netherlands on one of those canal tours, and my tour guy was a refugee from one of these countries living in the Netherlands, but he told us his story, and you're right. They're better suited for that, or they figured out the system for that, I guess.
Yeah. The value of immigration in the United States only benefits the United States. So, it's, we could learn to stand something from our European partners overseas.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Same with
Back to what. Yeah. We could talk about that. Yeah. So one of your top priorities is cutting costs for working families with inflation and the cost of living being top of mind for a lot of voters, especially right now with gas prices over $4 a gallon.
Yeah.
What specific legislation actions would you support to provide immediate relief to households in District 5?
And this is where I'm more moderate, I guess, or more the middle of the road, because from the Democrat to the Republican, because one of my biggest solutions for gas prices is we hold the most oil out of any country. I believe in actually using our own resources, drilling our own oil. We haven't opened a new refinery since 1977 because of all the red tape in doing my research. So we need, instead of selling our own oil overseas for less and buying it back more expensive, we need to use our own resources. Now, granted, I know there's environmental things that come along with that, and I love the environment. I love hiking. I love the outdoors. So we need to use clean fuel. With all the technology now, there's no reason why we can't drill our own oil, but use clean fuel. And actually, they just cut the gas tax, I saw, which finally, I don't know how much that'll lower it. That's what he says. But yeah, the gas tax, which we need to, and we need to have a separate refinery when gas prices spike for emergency use as well.
Sure. Well, yeah, and I think that one of the things that people don't understand is that United States, we don't have a demand, we don't have a supply and demand problem when it comes to gasoline here in the United States. What we have is a corporate greed problem in the United States right now. And what has happened since the start of this war in Iran is that gas is European Asians are finding shortages when it comes to gas. People I see online, they'll say the things like, when Biden was president, gas prices shot up to, $4, $5. Not really. I think it was more like $3.50, $3.55.
Yeah.
But what happened was after COVID, refineries overseas in Europe and in Asia and Africa, those refineries were not producing the fuel that was necessary to supply the demand. And the United States, under Biden, he authorized some of our oil companies to sell their fuel overseas, which did create, it allowed for that fuel, our supply to drop. And of course, anytime our supply potentially drops, the oil companies are going to, the fuel companies are going to take advantage of that, and they're going to raise rates. Well, that's what happened then. Same thing happens now. But what's happening now is that under Trump, he authorized the sale of like 10 times as much of American fuel to go overseas to other countries. Because here's the thing, in other countries, they'll sell a liter of gasoline, which is about, it takes 3 liters or so to equal a gallon. They'll sell 3 liters at $4 a liter. Or they'll sell a liter, I'm saying it wrong. They'll sell a liter for like $4. So what they're really paying is like $12 and change for a gallon of gasoline, where here in the United States, we're paying close to $4. So there is a money-making opportunity through what our corporate oil companies have created, which is just an insurmountable amount of greed. And they're selling far more fuel overseas than they had sold during 2023 or 2022. So ultimately, once again, and the thing that gripes my ass is the fact that Shell and Texaco and BP, they're all going to come out at the end of the quarter and say, look at these profits we made, $9 billion over the course of 3 months. And we're going to sit here and a lot of people are going to look at that and they're just going to go, oh, good for them. Or they're going to be angry about it. And they're going to ask why. Why did this happen? Why did we allow for this to happen? But, neither here nor there. Okay.
Yeah. You're right.
That's another one of my soapbox.
And that goes into my next thing when it comes to inflation, grocery prices. The meat industry is 85% of the distributors in the meat industry are owned by 4 companies in my research. And so those 4 companies can jack up prices. So farmers who sell the meat through the distributor to the grocery store are making less and the consumer pays more. We need to have more competitive distributors, or let farmers go more direct to grocery stores and break up the middleman more, because grocery prices, I mean, the distributors is where they get jacked up, whether you're buying whatever, like your hamburger meat or your steaks, I mean, those are usually the biggest things that jump in price. But we need to break up the middleman more or have more competition because I get it. And you got to also look at the other side. They create jobs. So I get that part, the big companies, but you have to maybe have more competition and then you still have equal or more jobs as well. I mean, and there are bills in my research I saw. They did bills for the USDA and everything that did say there should be more competition, but I don't know if they always follow through when you have 85% of the meat industry owned by, I can't think of all the names off the top of my head. I know Tyson's one. I think JRB or something. There's one company actually who's Brazilian when I was looking. But yeah,
Yeah.
that own 85% of.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think I saw that a pound of beef is something like $8 for a pound of beef, and I try to go cheap. I go for like the 70-30 mix with that comes in the tube that'll last a month in my fridge as long as I don't open it. It's crazy to me. I am paying more for coffee now than I have ever paid before.
Tariffs,
and coffee's coffee is one of those things that I can't live without. I mean, I don't think I'm addicted to caffeine, but I certainly recognize the need.
Well, that's the thing about coffee too, is you have to get it from other countries. So that's where the tariffs hurt you, is products like coffee. The only places that in the US that can grow coffee, Hawaii and Puerto Rico are the only places that have the temperature for coffee beans. The rest don't. So we have to get it from other countries, unless it's from Puerto Rico or Hawaii. But yeah, I mean,
you're absolutely right. You've made a point to include mental health and veterans care in your healthcare platform. What are the biggest gaps that you see in the VA system or local healthcare infrastructure that need to be addressed?
Well, that's actually a good question because I have talked to veterans, and I like to ask questions because that's how you learn. You can read a bunch of stuff on the internet, but until you go to the source and ask questions from people that actually deal with it, you don't actually know what's true. So I've talked to veterans and they've said the VA is the wait times. That's one of the biggest issues. Why should our veterans be waiting? We need to have a system. And a lot of our district is rural as well. So I get that, but you need to have more telehealth options, more where they can get faster services, because I've seen already in the district, rural hospitals have shut down and there are veterans in the rural areas. We actually have a military base in our district, Shaw Air Force Base in Sumter. So we need more programs, and the VA needs to be fixed because veterans shouldn't have to wait for service. Mental health is a big issue in this country, I think. We have more shootings than any other country in the world. We're one of the most violent countries because of and I think mental health and addiction go into the same program. Now, granted, this administration is taking a hardline stance on taking out the cartels, which I agree. You need to go and battle the cartels, but you have to get to the root of the problem as well, so people don't need drugs or anything else. I mean, it's all about supply and demand, really. If you fix the root of the problem, less people will want the source, which means they're not selling their product, which will hurt them in business wise.
Yeah. No, and I'll when it comes to mental health, I may stand alone on this, but our president is the poster child for mental health.
I agree. Yeah, he should be the first in line, but we need more programs to fix it.
Yeah, you well, and or just care, for you mentioned rural areas of your district, and there are some absolutely your district has some of the largest agricultural and rural areas in the state. For many parts of the rural parts of your district, access to care is just an extremely big hurdle as the cost. What is something that could improve healthcare accessibility for those living outside of the major hubs?
Pop-up healthcare units, telehealth, like I said, you need pop-up healthcare. The problem is doctors and nurses, medical professionals, they want to go to the cities because they can make more money. So we need to fund more the rural, because one of my biggest strategies during this campaign is door knocking. And one of my biggest, I mean, it's easy to go and knock doors in the suburbs and housing complexes. I do a lot to talk to people there. But one of my biggest things is I'll drive house to house in the rural areas to talk to people. I'll stop, and they've never seen a candidate show up because of where they live. And I'll talk to them about healthcare and things. I've talked to people about where's the closest hospital. I mean, some people down in the rural areas, I got to go 30 minutes. So if there's an emergency, they got to go 30 minutes just to get to the hospital. That's a lot of time and then remember, the ambulance has to get to them first. So that's 30 minutes there and then 30 minutes back to the hospital. That's an hour round trip.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you
That's
have an
life.
emergency,
That's
you can't
life or
wait.
death.
Yeah, exactly. An hour is, when it comes to life or death or emergency situation, is not that much, you don't have that much time really to get there. So you need these access, pop-up things to help with emergencies, and you need more access to attract medical professionals, I guess you could say. My dad was a doctor. When he first started, he was a cardiovascular surgeon. So before he started when we moved to Bangor, Maine, they didn't have a heart program. People had to go to Portland, Maine or Boston. So, and you've seen Maine, you got all this rural area. Maine's a big rural state as well. So I grew up rural, and all that northern part is nothingness, woods, and stuff. But all those people that live up there, if you go to Portland or Boston, you'd have to get a helicopter or medical chopper, and that costs a lot of money as well. So my dad, he moved to Bangor, Maine. He started the heart program there in the late 80s and started his own practice. They didn't have that. So people could actually go and get the care they needed there. So that's a big accomplishment that he did, to set up that program. He got job offers in California and Denver and different big cities and stuff, but he decided to start his own practice in Bangor, Maine, where they didn't have that, before.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I spoke with Denny LeVay, who was my guest on the previous episode, was he talked about in Idaho, where there are places in Idaho, because to travel across the state of Idaho may take you 8 hours, which Idaho, in my opinion, isn't a huge state, but for some reason, the idea of traveling 8 hours to get from one corner to the other is just unbearable.
Oh, yeah.
But he talked about how difficult it was to really serve the rural parts of Idaho when it comes to emergency healthcare. And that's a state that is extremely sparse. I mean, I think they're approaching a million or 2 million. I'm not sure. You know what? I don't want to get into the numbers as far as population, because I messed up South Carolina.
Wyoming.
He asked me what yeah, I was gonna say he asked me what the population of South Carolina was, and I said almost firmly, I don't know, 2 million, something like that. I was wrong. There's 2 million in Columbia. That's
well, yeah. There's 7 congressional districts. Yeah, 750,000 persons. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but South Carolina has a lot of rural area that isn't really, you can't negotiate it by a major interstate. You have to go off onto regular highways and surface streets and things like that. And we have a problem when it comes to serving emergency services for people here in the South Carolina. And that plays out across the country. I mean, healthcare or adequate healthcare is just not available like it is in other parts of the world. You and I were talking about off air that my desire to live on a fjord in Fenway, if I needed emergency services, they have helicopters available that would potentially come directly to me to serve. In the UK, they have people on jetpacks to provide first aid if necessary. Like someone on a jetpack could land outside of your house to provide emergency services till like an ambulance showed up. And it sounds futuristic and like it doesn't exist, but it does. We are so far behind here in the United States when it comes to actually being able to provide that level of necessary healthcare.
We're the richest country in the world, yet we can't come up with a fair healthcare plan. I mean, me personally, I'm for universal healthcare, but the problem with trying to pass universal healthcare or bills for that is you do have the rich insurance companies and rich pharmaceutical companies that hold all the cards. I feel like in this campaign, I'm David going up against Goliath. I'm a working class person,
Sure.
I'm a guy with a big mouth, and that's pretty much it. These other people, they got money and power and influence, and when you go up against them, that's why I don't see many working class people in Congress. But guess what? We're in a new day. We're in a new era. And I believe it can happen. My first ancestor came over to this country in 1635, John Clough, 15 years after the Pilgrims. He came over in the Queen Elizabeth, the ship. And when they came over for this new land and the founding fathers, they've been through all these historical events. I'm sure they didn't expect this to what happened. Even Abraham Lincoln, for example, because we have a rifle that's passed down. A relative was in his funeral procession or has a rifle from that era. But Abraham Lincoln started the Republican Party. He'd be rolling over in his grave right now if he saw what was going on with it right now, because that's not what he had envisioned at all.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely correct. I think for Republican, modern day Republicans to continue to cling to this idea that they are the party of Lincoln have really lost their grasp on reality.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that as an insult or anything like that. What I'm acknowledging is that Democrats and Republicans used to be almost completely aligned as part of the party. That there were segregationists on one side, and then you had Democrats and Republicans. I say segregationists, slave owners and things like that that claimed their allegiance to the Democrat Party. But in that time period, there were also abolitionists that were Democrats. The Republican Party were considered the abolitionists, but it was a much more cohesive group back then. And it really wasn't until the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s when you really saw the Dixiecrats, Democrats, attaching themselves to segregation and inequality and things like that. The only thing I think that Lincoln probably would have been okay with that they was that women not own property or have the right to vote. Like that was I'd have to go back and look, but I'm not entirely certain that I can find anything where Lincoln was like, yeah, women should vote. So I'd have to go back and look. I'm not saying he didn't feel that way. I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, and I get that. I'm a huge historian. I love history, and history is one of those things because I didn't think about doing like a side YouTube project for history. But yeah, like you said, and in my opinion, Lincoln was the best president this country's ever had because he did end slavery. He did a lot of good for this country. But you're right. He also had his faults. He's a man, just like any man. We all have our faults, nobody's perfect. But he did, I think, because he didn't even start the Civil War. Like the funny thing is, the two worst presidents were the ones surrounding him. Buchanan before him actually entered us into the Civil War. And then Andrew Jackson was trying to take away rights from freed slaves after, him. So that didn't really, so the two presidents surrounding Lincoln were not as good, and so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Modern infrastructure is one of the pillars of your campaign. Beyond roads and bridges, what does modern infrastructure look like for District 5 in 2026?
Well, like I said, District 5 is one of those districts that's weird because we do have a lot of rural, but we also have a suburban culture. And I live this suburban culture because I commute to Charlotte for work. So you have a lot of people who live over here in District 5 in South Carolina who commute to Charlotte and work. So you need to widen them, especially in places like Indian Land, for example. The population's growing. It's one of the most growing places, and yet 521 can be a nightmare rush hour traffic. I travel 77. Sure. Luckily, my hours, I usually go into work at like 6:30. So I'm on the road at like 5 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning. So traffic's not as bad. But coming back at 3 in the afternoon, starts picking up a little bit. So I know what the highway traffic can be like, unless I do a double, which I do a lot of double shifts as well. That's not bad at all. But during rush hour, I've been in rush hour traffic. It's growing. South Carolina's growing because the cost of living is cheaper. So more people want to live here than Charlotte. but still work in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Another thing with infrastructure and the rural areas, because I also have a platform where I want to expand trade schools so we can expand jobs in the rural areas. So we need better broadband. There are times I'm driving through the district down on these roads and my phone cuts out, my music cuts out because it's not getting very good reception. So we need better broadband. I mean, we spend taxpayer dollars to pay companies like private contractors like Elon Musk's Starlink to provide these satellite services and things, but they're not doing the job. I mean, that's one of the things too. My platform I want to cut out is private contractors. We have enough government funded for government officials. Instead of cutting federal jobs, why can't we, cut the private contractors who are not associated with the government, just so they can put more money in
especially. Well, like you mentioned Elon Musk, and we're talking about Starlink. When it comes to how much Starlink is subsidized by the United States, our taxpayers are funding this subsidization of Starlink, and a lot of the, Elon Musk being the richest person in the world, the person that is probably going to hit that $1 trillion mark as far as personal or whatever value. The likelihood is he's going to be the first one to do it. A lot of his wealth has specifically come from the United States subsidization of most of his companies, whether it's Neuralink or Tesla or Starlink. Like, these are companies that are receiving a lot of money from the federal government. And as far as I'm concerned, they're failing whatever it is that earned them the right to receive those subsidizations. So if you cut out those subsidizations from a company that's creating, it's Tesla vehicle, which I don't own one, would I? I don't know. I have range fear. Like I am scared to death of how far a Tesla is going to make it. But I hear nightmare stories about safety concerns around Teslas. I have friends that own Teslas that they closed the door too hard and the inside panel fell off. And they just have to kind of deal with it or take it to a Tesla to get it fixed. But the Tesla dealership's going to charge them an arm and a leg to repair that. And it's, so like, I look at those things and I say, why is the federal government continuing to subsidize these companies with billions of dollars when they're not really living up to their end of the bargain? Starlink, to me, if the federal government is giving money to Starlink to continue to push out satellite, they're using our in Florida, they're using our launch pads to put more Starlink satellites into the atmosphere. And why isn't, if we're subsidizing it, why isn't Starlink available to every person in the United States through, some sort of low cost program?
And if you think about it, like going back to history, going to the billionaires and what we have now, with like going back to our founding fathers, they were shopkeepers and farmers and things like that. And now they're all rich billionaires. This is not what the founding fathers, they envisioned working people up there to help other working people. They weren't, large. I mean, I guess some of them were like George Washington. He owned a lot of land. I get that. Jefferson, they had the big properties and stuff like that. But at the same time, a lot of people in Congress were not like that. They started out as shopkeepers and, things like that, and it's really a shame what it's gotten away from, and that's why, for example, George Washington, when he started and was the first president, he put on, the president should run for more than 2 terms, it wasn't supposed to be a career thing. And they made they made it to where it's supposed to be about the people. It's supposed to be a servant of the people. It's gotten away. It's gotten to be who can get the riches, who's most agenda. One of the things I want to fight for is term limits. I want to fight for how much money spent on campaigns. I mean, Elon Musk spent $240 million to get Trump elected, another rich guy elected. How is that right for the working class people? Yet a single mother has to decide between groceries, what she can feed her baby while working 2 jobs for daycare. And, and it's not right. I mean, people, they don't have hearts anymore. I think when you reach a certain echelon of where you are in the standings, you don't have a heart anymore because you have to feel for the people struggling out there, the people trying to make it. I'm not talking about the lazy people living off the government welfare who just don't want to work. I'm talking about people that are trying to work, still working 2 jobs, but can't make ends meet. It's discouraging to me, you know?
You look at Walmart. Walmart employs millions of people across the country. This is a business that I think that is one of those that, I don't really believe in the too big to fail situation, but Walmart is one of those companies that employs so many people across the country, and yet a huge piece of their employees, a huge number of their employees are on social programs because they don't make enough money working a 40-hour shift during the week to support themselves or support their family. So they have to be on Medicaid because of how little Medicaid they have to receive social services in order to support themselves because they don't make a living wage at one of the richest corporations on the planet.
Same with Amazon.
It's
Amazon.
Amazon too.
I did a stint at Amazon. I worked there for a couple months, while working with American Airlines in the warehouse. They give you your 30-minute lunch where you have to clock out for that and then clock back in. And then the thing that the driving factor was for me, they tried to mandate me to come in on my day off when I had my other job to work, and there was no leeway. So I said, all right, I'm done here, But these companies, it's just factories to them. People are just mice, that they could just put on the wheel, use, and all right, there'll always be more workers, It doesn't matter. We can just go somewhere else, then they start fresh. And that's what drives me crazy. I mean, the money that is spent on elections and campaigns, that money can go to help people who are hungry, help people who need things, that don't have the best situation. And it is a shame. Even in my election, the Republican opponent, Wes Clymer, he's raised $1 million, maybe more probably at this time. Mallory, my Democratic opponent's raised over $100,000. I've raised maybe less than $5,000. Moses has been spent out of pocket because that's how much I believe in this. Just knocking doors, talking to people. I don't even ask for money anymore because I know what it takes to make a buck, and I'm doing a grassroots, and I stand by that. And people who raise millions of dollars and tell you it's all small dollar donations, they're full of BS, if you don't mind me saying. Because there's no way you raise $5 million within a day and 2 days just off of grassroots small dollar donations, because I know how much it is, and it's not like that. You're not going to get
not for a congressional district.
Yeah. So don't tell me that there's small roots.
Yeah, the amount of money in politics nowadays, and what people think that it really requires in order to get elected. There are House districts here in Columbia that it will potentially cost $160,000 to $200,000 just to win a house seat. That to me is insane. For a job that's only going to pay $20,000 with a little bump here for their extra sessions or things like gas and whatnot. It is insane to me that in order to win that election, a house seat race is potentially going to cost one candidate nearly $200,000, and there may be 6 other candidates in that race are also going to raise $100,000 to $200,000. You're talking about $1 million race that doesn't even net 2% of that. It is utterly insane to me.
Hey, like one candidate I'm actually working with, we're helping each other. She's running as a Democrat in Sumter, Lisa Davy. She's awesome. And she's going up against the House Speaker. I mean, you should have her on our show sometime. We canvassed together already. Our districts overlap. She's going up against, I think, Muriel Smith, the Speaker of the House in the South Carolina House. And he's got over $1 million, $2 million. And then the funny thing I always find funny, you look at the people in the House. For example, Wes Clymer, who's running as a Republican in my race. He sued against the pay raise, but that's easy for someone, and I'm speaking to you, Wes Clymer, if you're watching, that's easy for someone who is a trust fund baby and comes from money and has money from his dad. You have daddy's money, and I'm not even kidding. This is all
totally
snowballing for someone like you. get me up against the stage with Wes Clymer. I'll have him in tongue. I'm not scared of anybody like that, to back down. I tell it how it is, to be honest with you. I fight for the little person because that's what I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Right,
I think that's one of the things that people, I was going to say, I think that's one of the things in this people. Oh yeah. Yeah. But that's one of the things I think that Democrat, Republican, regardless of which party you're in, I find one of the issues with how people align themselves or who it is that they vote for
Mm-hmm.
without acknowledging exactly who those individuals are.
Yeah.
I can look at somebody who makes, for instance, in the governor's race, Billy Webster. Billy Webster's a wealthy man. He has built his wealth off of the work that he's done. But you go a little bit deeper, and I'm not choosing sides yet, but you go a little deeper and you see that Billy Webster's been invested in these payday loan companies.
Yeah.
And these are abusive companies. I've said it on the air here before. I have fallen victim to one of those payday loan places once before in my life, like 20 years ago, where I didn't have a job that paid quite enough that I needed fast money to be able to pay for a bill. And I did it. My next paycheck I went to pay off what I had borrowed, but there were fees attached to the fact that I was paying it off early that I had agreed to by signing for. And now I'm paying more for something that was supposed to be, it's a temporary thing. We understand the situation. We're going to give you money to pay for something. You're just going to pay us back. But because I paid it off early which means they didn't get to charge me interest, they had fees that basically were the same as 5 months worth of interest. And it's insane to me that's how business is being done.
It is.
And that's so when I look at candidates that I think would represent me best, I go deeper and I look at, are they a lawyer? Are they a lawyer that can take, at least for House seats and Senate seats like that here in the state? I say, can they afford to take 10 weeks to 15 weeks off from their job and still have their job or still be able to do their job? Or are they, is this just can they take a break from their job? Well, I can't run for office in the state because my job, I can't take off 10 weeks. It just isn't possible. It would have to, either the state of South Carolina for House seats and Senate seats would have to change to a full year like California and New York and other places, or they'd they'd have to, that's the only way. It would have to be a full-time job.
Yeah, because people can't afford to pay.
Yeah.
But someone like Wes Clymer, who, it doesn't matter to him. He can do it, and he still has tons of money in the bank, just because of where he comes from. So he can showboat and vote against pay raises for people that can't afford it, And that, I said, that's all just showboat and say, I'm for voice for the people. No, you're not.
That is fundamentally one of the first things that I look at when I see a candidate running for a state house position, whether it's a House or Senate. And I ask myself, how is it? Can they recognize me as a constituent and have respect for me because I can't step away from my job the way they can step away from their job. Now, we've had plenty of candidates that are retired military that have earned the right, I think, to potentially be representatives, things like that. But for the most part, a lot of the people that represent us here at the state house level are they don't have a very difficult time doing it. They own their own businesses. They're lawyers. But I look at others that I know, Heather Bauer, for instance, who works a full-time job while the state house is in session. And she's raising an infant with her husband.
There's a lot. I would have to still work at the airport if I was doing a house seat. At least Congress pays you a livable wage. But remember, in Congress too, you got to support your bills where you live. Plus, in DC, you got to get a place to live. So it's like two two places you're supporting almost. But again, in Congress, they're all millionaires. Our current representative, Ralph Norman, he's a real estate developer. You know what I mean? He went in worth $14 million and he doubled his net worth since being in Congress. And that is a big problem too. They all somehow miraculously double their net worth. My moral values are stronger than that. I want to help the people. I like what I do. I don't mind living a life that's simple. You know, I don't need big fancy cars and big fancy houses and all this stuff. I like my simple life here in the country, you know, because that's who I am. You know, I have a yard to play with my dog. I have simple things in life. Once in a while, you know, maybe go camping or on a little vacation, you know, but that's what Americans want. Americans want to be able to afford their bills. They want to be able to have a nice, simple life and maybe have a little money left over to take a vacation or something like that once in a while. You know,
Absolutely.
do something fun in life.
Before we get out of here, I also have a few more questions. You've called for safe communities, strong trust, specifically mentioning the relationship between police and neighbors. What are some of the practical steps you believe can be taken at a federal level to support local law enforcement while ensuring the community accountability?
All right. Well, I'm going to get a little serious here. Someone in our life who we know, important to us. Last Halloween, she was sexually assaulted at a party. And unfortunately, the detective called her and said they wouldn't get the kit back, you know, the testing kit, 6 months to a year after the assault happened, which to me, that's a big issue. Why? And that's not the detective's fault. That's not the department's fault. It's the funding's fault. That stems from the government. Why should you have to, you know, why should a victim have to wait that long? Well, the person who did this is walking around free. So we need better funding. And I understand law enforcement, you know, is a lot of local funding, but a little bit still comes from the federal government. So we need funding for labs. I mean, I guess that would be a lab issue. We need funding for body cams, you know, because we need safe communities. But a way you're going to have a safe community is when the people in that community are on the side of law enforcement and you have neighborhood watch programs and stuff like that. So it is, like I said, law enforcement. I know I'm a supporter of the police. I think they do great things, you know. I back the blue, but we need programs. And again, going back to mental health, we also need programs where if law enforcement needs the help they get, they can get it, you know, so we don't have unnecessary killings or shootings. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I've never been one of those advocates that thought that defunding the police was something that should even be a slogan. But if you look at but there aren't a lot of politicians out there that have ever said that we should defund the police. Should law enforcement be accountable for the budgets that they have, and should they be accountable for the money where they spend it? Yeah. But that goes for every department, whether it's law enforcement or first responders, that sort of thing. But I'm dumbfounded at how the right has typically just demonized the left for this idea that they don't believe in law enforcement, or they don't believe that police officers have a necessary, you know, standing in our society. That's not to say that I can. I was going to say that's not to say that I can ignore the fact that historically, the police were created as a slavery enforcement and retrieval group, but you know, that's not what the police are nowadays.
No. I mean, and you have bad apples in any job or any department, so there's going to be bad police officers, but the majority of them are good. So it's just all about weeding out, you know, better training programs, better programs, so you don't get as many bad apples in the police department who do the wrong thing, because the majority of them are good and just want to do the right thing and protect the community.
Yeah. Between look, I'll just talking about bad apples, between Zach and I, my co-host for the show, 50% of us probably deserve to be in jail right now, you know?
Yeah.
But
that's why I always
we're
tell
not.
people,
No.
when people, it's funny you said that, because I forgot when I was talking about immigration, when people tell me on the other side, yeah, well, they came across the border illegally, I say, all right, tell me one time in your life you've never done anything illegal and just never got caught.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all done stuff that we're not proud of.
I'd go a step. I would go a step further than that. I would ask them, how do you define a border? Please tell me what in your head, how are you defining a border? Because
I'm sorry, Bruno's
geopolitical border, whatever.
Bruno's trying to steal the show here.
Yeah. That's cute. All right. Last two questions. If you're elected, 100 days in office, what is the first piece of legislation that is important to you that you want to co-sponsor and introduce in that first 100 days after you're sworn in?
Probably I would have to say an immigration policy that actually fits. I mean, I have so many different bills and policies I want to do, but since you asked me, the first one I'm going to have to say, because I've got healthcare, I've got inflation, but we need a sensible immigration policy because it ties in with the economy as well. More K-1 visas to help with agriculture and our farmers so that grocery prices are lower, because if you deport the people working in our farms, guess what? There's another thing. Produce is going to be higher. I talked about the meat industry. Well, produce will be higher too, because that's how we keep costs down. But we also need fair labor practices too. We can't be abusing immigrants or people who come over to pick our vegetables and stuff. We need to actually pay a fair, decent wage, but not take advantage of the system either. So there's a lot of
we can afford to.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. All right. Last question. For the voters who are still undecided, what is the one thing you want them to know about the kind of representative you will be in the 5th District?
All right. That's the perfect question, because this is what I tell everybody is I plan on showing up everywhere. My current map right now, and again, the maps might change, but the current map right now, I have 10 counties, and I plan on being in every county every other month. So on a weekend, I'll be here, and I'll be here. I want to be the representative that is easily accessible, the guy that you can have his phone number and reach out if you have an issue or question, the guy that doesn't dodge his constituents, the guy that holds regular town hall meetings so you can come and ask things, because my whole philosophy is in the district, your ears, in the DC, you're a voice. So you need that whole retrospect. And in closing on that note, I want to quickly say, because I told you about the new maps, I don't know what's going on in the State House, but right now I'm in District 5. If the maps changed, I'd be the only one with an address in the new District 6. So I wanted to break that news just in case. I'm still running no matter what happens. Either 5 or 6, I'm running.
Look, I will say that one of the things that I hold as being the most valuable when it comes to my representatives is accessibility. That doesn't necessarily mean that I need to know their address or I need to know, where they're going to be or where they're buying their groceries or things like that. But just we have too many representatives across this state and across this country that don't meet with their constituents, that don't sit down and talk to them or don't hold town halls. I get that for a lot of Republicans right now, town halls for them are not a safe space because they're going to get beat up on the issues, especially if their constituents ordered a $100 or $500 Trump phone that hadn't, been delivered to them after a year. But legitimately, that's one of the biggest things. And there are so many candidates that when I ask them specifically, how are you going to make yourself available to your constituents? And a lot of them said, well, we have email addresses for congressional offices. Our congressional office, we have an email address. You can send us letters. You can call our phone. And I look, I told Joe Wilson, you do not respond to those emails. I get a canned email response every single time. Yeah. Never have I gotten a response directly from Joe Wilson, even though I have stood next to him. And called him a Keebler elf. But
probably a makeshift AI created email he sends you.
Exactly. And that's one of the biggest problems I have. You're there representing people that should be able to know and recognize that they're being represented. Oh, they don't always have. You don't have to agree with everything your constituents, a particular sect of your constituents say, but you at least have to be able to take an account of what it is that they think is important.
Yeah.
And if there is no communication between a congressional office and their constituents, then, that should automatically devalue them.
Exactly.
Ralph Norman is not accessible.
Yeah, he's not. I talked to people in Fairfield County. Ralph Norman's never even visited Fairfield County. They never see him.
I'd believe it.
County.
I'd believe it. Well, Andrew, I want to remind everybody that the election, primary election, is coming up on June the 9th. With it's between you and Mallory Dittmer.
Yeah.
And
she I honestly, since we're being honest here and let it all out, I think she's another Ralph Norman that's on the Democratic side that won't leave York County. So that's just my 2 cents. But you can take it as, like I said, I don't sugarcoat things. But
every election is an opportunity to prove your value to the people that you live near, and the districts you live in. So ultimately, based on your website and the things I've seen on social media, the attachment that Matt Villardo has to you, I think that puts a lot of that for me supports you as a candidate, and I absolutely hope for success. Again, the primary election is going to be on June the 9th, so that's coming up very soon when this episode releases.
Depending on the new maps, if they push it to August, but hopefully it's June 9th. So,
look, as a poll clerk, I am scared to death as to what it's going to mean when these if they decide that redistricting is what they want to do. It is going to create such a headache.
Because they're going to still do the June 9th. They're still doing the June 9th for like Senate and governor and the statewide and all the other things. But the only things that would be pushed to August are the congressional districts. Not a lot of people are going to go to those elections if they already vote in the primary June 9th. So there might totally be a different outlook for the primaries of Congress.
Well, and let me tell you right now, as a polling clerk that runs a precinct, I don't want to have to deal with there being potentially, because we've already got our runoff election has already been planned. Like they know that in my district, in Lexington County, there will be runoffs because there's there's 6 candidates for Republican for governor or whatever. There's multiple. No one's going to reach 50%. So we're going to have runoffs. And I'm also dreading the fact that the Lexington County School District 1 school board decided that they needed their election on the same day as the runoff that's already planned. So literally in every one of the precincts in School District 1, there will be 2 elections going on. You will walk in and have to sign in at one election, go vote, and then sign in at another election in the same building after you've finished voting. Wait in line, sign in again, and then go vote again.
Yeah, people are going to want to do that.
The amount of complications.
But if they do redistrict, they might shoot themselves in the foot because come midterms, people might be fed up with it, and there might be more Democratic seats in South Carolina than they anticipated. Look at the new maps.
Let's hope.
Just trying to split up Clyburn's district. You put Columbia, for example, in 3 different districts. That could help those districts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't think people on the Republican side, I don't think they understand what it means to take Clyburn out of Richland County and put Richland County firmly in Joe Wilson's district.
Yeah.
Richland County is an extremely populated county. If everyone turns out, Joe Wilson and the Republicans
Joe Wilson would be out if Clyburn went against Joe Wilson.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely a fact. I think.
Yeah, that would be an interesting race.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that would be an interesting race. And then I'd be the only one in the new District 6. Clyburn would be in 2. Now we're going to have 5. So, yeah, it'd be interesting. I think we'll see what happens, though. I guess they go in special election.
There is a lot that I don't think they understand when it comes to data and statistics and analytics in this idea of redistricting and trying to manipulate who gets to vote for whom. It just, look, these things have backfired before, and the likelihood is that it could potentially do it again. So,
exactly.
Andrew, again, I want to thank you. What is the website, just to make sure that everybody knows?
It's clough4sc5.com, CLOUGH 4F sc5.com. And my slogan is enough is enough, vote for Clough. That way people know how to pronounce my last name.
Enough is enough, vote for Clough. I love it. That's fantastic. Well, Andrew, thank you again very much. Just make sure go visit his website. You can find links in the show notes here. Before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you want to say that you feel like we haven't yet?
No, that's it. This is Bruno right here, my dog Bruno. But yeah, he's already been introduced. But that's pretty much it. I think I've covered everything from redistricting to my pillars and just hoping vote for me. We need more working class people up there. The last thing I'll ask you real quick. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh no, I just say I'd rather have your vote than your money, because a vote means a lot more than money, really. Yeah.
Well, last thing I'll ask you is, are you the guy I need to get in touch with for some of those comp tickets on American Airlines?
Oh yeah. Yeah. People do tell me that airline tickets are expensive because of the price of fuel. Again, it's hurting the airline industry. So yeah. And summer travel coming up. We got the World Cup in this country, which I love soccer because of my wife. So, it's just one of those things that, hopefully it's a good World Cup and a busy travel season, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Andrew, again for being on the show. That's going to wrap it up for this episode number 307. Links to all of our past episodes, podcast platforms, merchandise, and social media are available on our webpage, theallaboutnothing.com. And if you think our financial model of giving away free content and entertainment is silly and you're in the giving mood, why not become an official Nothinger and support the show? Members get early access to this episode as well as exclusive content. Visit members.theallaboutnothing.com, or you can find a link on our webpage. You can also give a one-time donation through the same link. If you'd like to be a part of the show, you can call and leave us a message, 803-672-0533, or you can email the show at theallaboutnothing.com, or join our Discord server, links found on our webpage. Thanks for listening, everyone. You all stay safe, be kind, and
keep your hands to yourself.
The All About Nothing podcast is a product of Big Media and produced and engineered by me, Barrett Gruber. Thanks to Cake for our intro music, Sick of You. You can follow everything Cake the band at cakemusic.com. Thanks to Muff the producer for our outro music. You can follow Muff on Instagram at Muff the producer. You can follow me across social media by visiting Linktree/Barrett Gruber. And you can follow Zach King on Linktree/AANZach. Want to support the show? Visit our webpage, theallaboutnothing.com, and become a member. There are several tiers available that give you early access to episodes as well as exclusive content. To find links to our social media, podcast platforms, and merchandise to support the show, as well as past episodes, visit theallaboutnothing.com. If you'd like to be a part of the show, you can email the show at theallaboutnothing.com, or you can call our number and leave a message. Dial 803-672-0533. If the time between these episodes is more than you can handle, check out our sister shows. What the Pod Was That with Carrie, Zach, and myself. Welcome to Wonderland with me. Politically Speaking with Erica, Kirsten, and Emily. And Black, White, and Blue in the South with Dr. Jameel Brooks and Bill Kimmler. Please subscribe and share this show. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe and punch that notification bell. Thank you for listening, and hear us next week.
Well, you've made it to the end. You survived the rambling, the tangents, and whatever nonsense we just subjected your ears to. Congratulations. Now that your brain is sufficiently scrambled, how about doing something productive for democracy? Before you go off to forget everything you just heard, do yourself a favor and double check that your voter registration is actually legit at theallaboutnothing.com/voter. It's about the only way to make sure your vote counts, even if your taste in podcasts is questionable.
The preceding podcast is solely owned by the host or hosts and is distributed by Big Media, LLC. Copyright 2026.